Mic check, mic check.
Good afternoon, colleagues. I'm going to take this down now. I think you would have all seen the rules, although I see more people in, so perhaps I should leave it up for another minute or so. Colleagues, as you come in, good afternoon. Please look at the screen and
Good
help us
afternoon.
to go,
Good
help us
afternoon.
to go in an orderly way by abiding by these guidelines.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Oh, good afternoon. We're going to respond. Good afternoon.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good.
Afternoon. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Lenovo. Please, who is the person who is here as Lenovo? Please rename so that we can see your name.
Good afternoon. Judith Wedderburn is here.
Good afternoon, Judith.
Good afternoon, Michael Rufus here.
Good afternoon, Michael.
Good afternoon. Olivine Burke is here.
Hi, Olivine.
Hi. Hello.
Hello.
Good afternoon, Samantha Longman Mills.
Hi, Samantha.
Good afternoon. This is Norbert Campbell.
Good afternoon. How are you doing?
Good, good.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. This is Trevor Smith.
Hello. How are you doing?
I am
Good
good.
afternoon. Good afternoon, Tracy Rogers.
Hi, Tracy. How are you doing?
Well, thank you.
Good afternoon, Lauren Martin.
Hi there.
Good afternoon, Sharon.
Hi, Sharon.
Sharon, hi, how you do?
Not bad.
Good afternoon, Shanique Walters.
Hi, Shanique.
Good afternoon, Floyd Gordon.
Hello there, Floyd.
Yes, good afternoon. Arnaldo Brown here.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Jean Williams.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Jean.
Good afternoon, Valdirene Major.
Hi, Valdirene. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you.
Nice and sunny over there?
Yes, it is.
Good afternoon, Benny Watson.
Hi.
Good afternoon, Donna Hayroad and Salmon.
Hi, Donna Hay.
Good afternoon, Donovan McGrowder.
Aldria. Hi, Donovan. Aldria.
Fine, thanks.
Hi, Marie.
Hi, Charmaine.
I saw you before you could speak.
No, they're Thanks, Erica.
Lean. All right, I'm going to take down my rules now. I think you would have seen them, and we will start. You can turn off the video, Marie.
Yeah, they're expected to announce the next they can find back with their win, but basically what they want is to have a group of
And colleagues, remember to mute your mics. I'm hearing a radio. Remember to mute your mic and to change, if you're using your ID number, please change that so that we know your name.
Expect to see on something like this, like the Treasury Secretary, Stephen Mnuchin.
I can still hear something about the Treasury Secretary. So could you please help us? Okay, so colleagues, it's good to see so many people here. And I welcome you. I'm happy that you're here. And I hope that you will get something out of the presentation. We will take questions, but please put your questions in the chat box just so that you can remember what it is. And at intervals, I'll stop and we address the questions. The session is being recorded, Judith, for the information of everyone else. The session is being recorded. And I thank the Faculty of Social Sciences for this initiative. I think Dr. Chisholm is here. Dr. Chisholm, if you're here, could you?
Yes, Charmaine, I'm here.
Okay, good. A special welcome to Dr. Chisholm as well from the CETL in Mona. I see names that appear to be from St. Augustine, or people I have interacted with from Trinidad. Yes, I know I have the option to mute the mic, but I don't want to have to do that. Keisha Sherman Howell is here, and Keisha is going to assist in that regard. If you will not turn off your mics when you should have them off, Keisha will turn it off. Anyway, let us get started. And so I'm going to share the presentation that I have on the screen. So I am going to be sharing again. Okay, are you seeing now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. You know. Yep. Good.
Okay, good. Yes. I'm switching to the slide view. Okay. So this is what we are here about, helping you to write multiple choice questions if you're not already doing, and if you're doing so, giving you reminders if needs be for some people in what is good practice in terms of what you write on your multiple choice questions. There are G sections. I think we have dealt with the first one pretty much by saying hello to one another and so on. And now we're up to 171 persons, and that includes me. And in this, then there are sections 1 to 3 where we're looking at guidelines that it would be good for you to be aware of or to remember as you prepare multiple choice questions, and actually some tips as to how you design questions. Then we will look at a couple of examples. If we are good with time, we can take a couple of examples from you also, if you have any on hand that you feel a little uncertain about. Bear in mind that we don't want to see what you're going to put on an exam paper, but something perhaps close enough to it or something that you have in mind. And I think it's my last slide, I indicated what resources were used to compile this. I have to thank my colleagues in the Open Campus where, you know, we worked together on a presentation on for examples, and they allowed me to adapt the section on multiple choice questions. So it's not exactly what was used in the Open Campus, but it's based on it. That's me in case you are interested. And so I can skip that quickly. I think we can also, we got your names. We don't know your discipline or subject area. What I would ask is, since there's so many of us here, and we're up to 186 now, I would ask that if you are going to speak, you say your name, your faculty, and your discipline or subject area. So as you must, when you are preparing any kind of assessment activity or task, you should bear in mind what you are testing. And you do that by making sure, you know, keeping in the forefront of your mind the educational level that you are testing. So whether it is level 1 or year 1, year 2 of a course, year 3, a master's level, whatever it is, you have to keep that in mind, because that helps you to pitch the questions accurately so that you are not asking questions that are, you know, too not robust enough. Then you decide on the objectives of the course that you are testing, and you will already be aware of the objectives because you have a course outline you follow. And so you would make sure that at all times you're bearing that in mind. You have to make sure that the questions are pitched at the appropriate level. Again, as you know, I pointed out in number 1. And you could use a taxonomy, whether it be Bloom's, whatever it is that you use most often in your discipline. Bloom's is very commonly used. Maybe in other disciplines, there are others that are used. But bear the taxonomy in mind at all times, right? And refer to it. Don't be afraid to refer to it, and don't on your really very good. And as you create the questions that you are going to ask, at the same time, it may sound tedious, but create the answer or the desired response at the same time. It's easier in the end, right? It may be tedious, but it really is easier in the end. Say, if you need to, say why this is the correct answer, right? As you go through. And the assessment, UWI's assessment guidelines do say that you should be able to complete the paper. You should make sure that the student can complete the paper in the time allotted. And what they say is that you should be able to complete it, I believe, in a third of that time, because you, of course, are the expert. So you should be able to do that paper. In lickety split time, you should be able to finish that paper. So make sure that you can do the paper in much less time than the student. Don't ask the student to do something that you would not be able to do in the time that you have that's allotted for the exam. So now, as we said, what level is your course? You have a program outline, and if your course fits into that. And this is how you know the complexity of the questions that you should be asking. Now, I have this here, developing a table of specifications, but I'm not going to stress this because I don't expect that you would be doing this at this point. We are trying to complete a semester, you know, over which things have happened over which we have no control, and we're trying to get through. So I'm not going to stress this, but this is one of the things that ideally one would have done, and I would have gone into about how you go about evaluations, where you would list the objectives that you're going to test, and you know, look at the weightings and how you're going to test them, and so on. It is not necessary to retest the same objectives over and over again. It is possible that you may ask a question, or you know, have a question that's based on the same kind of knowledge, but don't be asking this or a different aspect of knowledge, a deeper aspect of it, but don't be testing the same thing over and over, right? Now, for fair assessment, and this is one of the things that you know, you would have heard students complain of, and it is something that you learn, you know, when you study education and so on, and testing, that you need to be fair to students, right? There are three things that are important, and I want Dr. Chisholm to say something on the third one, which is versatility. You have to make sure that what you're doing, the test, is valid. You have to make sure that it is reliable. And in terms of being valid, the degree to which a test, that's the degree to which a test measures the learning outcomes or objectives that you say they are to measure, and that you say you are measuring, right? So multiple choice items can focus on a broad representation of material, and this can increase the validity of the assessment. Make sure that it is also reliable, right? So that if there is less susceptibility to guessing, right, than there would be for false questions. I mean, when I think back to myself as a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, doing these multiple choice tests, I have to smile, you know, because some of the things that I you know, learned years ago about multiple choice tests and questions, I mean, you know, I don't know if the teachers knew it at those times. The objective scoring associated with multiple items frees them from inconsistency of scoring. This goes back to the point about making sure that you are doing your answer key at the same time, right? So, I mean, there should really be one best answer. In terms of versatility, there's a view that can be written to assess various levels of learning outcome. Also, that item you should be able to assess various levels of learning outcomes, from recall to application, and analysis. And the view is that MCQs cannot test students' ability to organize thoughts, articulate explanations, or creative ideas. Now, I think Dr. Chisholm would want to say something about that. So I'm inviting him to say it at this point.
Okay, thank you, Charmaine. There are different views on this, of course, in education. Certainly, there are those people who feel that multiple choice questions are best for lower order thinking skills, from the Bloom's um, thinking from Bloom's. But this is not really so. Multiple choice questions can test all levels of the Bloom's taxonomy, but they are notoriously difficult to write for the higher orders of the Bloom's taxonomy. So the application and the analysis, and even to get some levels of organization in terms of how the students are thinking about organizing their thoughts, articulating some kind of explanation. If you give them a series of activities and you ask them to choose which would be the best articulation and so on. So there are some possibilities, although you might not get the full kind of explanation that you would have received if you were, writing a prose piece, or if you're writing some narrative or something of that nature. So they're difficult to compose, and that's why we recommend question banks for these. And I think the people in medical sciences right across the world have helped us to understand how we can write multiple choice questions, to test higher order thinking skills. I don't want people to leave this workshop thinking that it is not possible. It's a little more difficult, but I believe it is possible. I don't think this workshop will be able to go into all the necessary skills and competencies we need to be able to do this perfectly.
Okay, thank you, Mervyn. And you're right, I'm not even going to try, because after a certain point, people are going to get into a place where we have diminishing returns. So I wouldn't attempt to do that. I would add to that, outside of the medical sciences, I've seen psychology use multiple choice exams in ways that, do challenge thinking, the students to think about the response that they're giving. So it's true that it does not, multiple choice questions do not have to be simple. And we're saying here, make sure that the ones you set meet are at the correct educational level and at the appropriate difficulty level. All right, so this slide is takes us back to the table of specifications, which, as I said, I'm not going to focus on. I just wanted to raise it, but I'm not going to go into it. So it's there, and what is going to be the sample of a table. So a table, a sample TOS could look like, but we're not going to go into that. All we're saying is that given better circumstances, I probably would have called you to something smaller as a workshop to work through things like this, but we won't do that. I won't punish you like this right now. And as we said, so you ensure that your questions are pitched at the appropriate level or levels of taxonomy. Reflecting the different levels in Bloom's or whatever other taxonomy it is. And all questions should not all be pitched at one level, of course, right? You're testing what students, I don't know what you'll be testing now, whether you will be doing all that students have covered for the entire semester by the time you get to the end of it. But make sure that the questions are not all pitched at one level. for testing. And this is just, I'm just using Bloom's, right? But you know the taxonomies that are used in your discipline. So I'll just use Bloom's here as a reminder. See at the bottom, the lowest level where you're testing recall of facts and basic concepts, up to the highest level, which tests, you know, creation of original works and so on. Of course, you won't be doing that. You won't be doing that in your multiple choice tests that you set, right? But certainly you would want students to go all the way up to being able to analyze, you know, what they have learned and so on. So that's just one taxonomy that we're looking at. This is the perhaps the most common one. And this is another way of looking at it. At the bottom, you're testing knowledge, how people, you know, what people know, what they, you know, of what they learned previously, what they remember, you know, how they understand facts comes next, how they apply knowledge to actual situations. They can do all of that. You can do all of that in multiple choice tests. Right? So these I will distribute, I will give the slides to the Faculty of Social Sciences. So don't try to write or anything like that. Please just try to follow, and where you need to ask questions. Now we're looking at actually designing your multiple choice questions. And here, these are the parts of the multiple choice question. For those from medicine, this is the anatomy of a multiple choice item. We have the stem first, and then the options. Some people call them alternatives or choices. In this case, there are 4 options, and 3 of them are distractors, right? They are not the right answer. 1 is the correct answer. Some people call it the keyed answer or the keyed option, right? So that's the structure of the multiple choice question. It does not have to be 4 options, of course, but in this case, this example, it's 4. Now, this is where we, you know, I want you to pay attention, pay even more attention. What you give as a stem, the stem should be meaningful by itself, right? The stem should have meaning, and it should present a clearly formulated problem, and the language should be simple and clear. Simple and clear and straightforward, quite straightforward. I mean, if many of us were to look at something set in medicine or so, we would not understand it. For people doing it, people in that discipline and so on, it should be clear to them what is being asked. Don't put irrelevant material in the stem, right? Don't talk about, you know, extraneous things. John Brown was a carpenter and so on, so all the way. That's totally unnecessary, and because that's not what you want students to focus on. If I were a student and I saw something like that, I'd be spending time, instead of trying to figure out the answer, I'd be trying to figure out, well, is this a trick? Is there a trick somewhere here? Why am I being told this? You know, should this have some sort of meaning? When sometimes it doesn't. It has no meaning to what you expect of them. Place as much wording in the stem as is possible, right? So you don't have to repeat the same words or phrases in each choice, right? You may have to look back at your stem and reword it to get rid of, you know, extraneous words. And we're going to look at some examples. If you have to use negative wording in the stem, highlight it, right? Not for, you know, highlight it in bold. Some people do bold and underline. Some people put it in caps and underline, whatever it is, make it clear. But use negative phrasing only when the learning outcome or objective requires it, right? Try to avoid using the negative phrasing as much as is possible. And avoid clues, you know, verbal or otherwise, that might allow students to select the right answer by saying, oh, okay, this must be the right one, because you had a clue in the stem, right? So try and avoid things like that. Don't give choices that are not plausible, right? Because that gives away what the answer is, right? So all the choices must be plausible to students. As the point is that implausible alternatives are not good distractors. Another thing to try to avoid, I know that some people like it, none of the above and all of the above. Try to avoid that also. What it means that the student keeps going back, you know, to look at what was above and trying to figure out, you know, and that takes time. This number 8 looks kind of simple, but you have to pay attention to it. Make sure that the correct answer is not in the same position all the time, or in any sort of pattern that the student could discern, right? So the correct answer, the position of the correct answer should be quite random. And make sure that each item is independent of the other items in the test. Which we mentioned before is reduced if the information from one question can be used to answer another question. And the alternatives in an item should not overlap. Now, in terms of grammar, please pay attention to the grammar.
A question.
Excuse me, remember the rules, please. Remember the rules. I will be pausing for questions very, very shortly. I'll be pausing for questions. Follow normal rules of grammar, please, for in your questions, right? So you make sure that you check the grammar of the question, that it is correct, that the questions are grammatically correct. Now, you can break or bend any of the rules if they will improve the effectiveness of the item, except the question about grammar, right? And my peeve, my over the years, the thing I shake my head about most is when I hear people say that they caught students, right? The testing then is not about catching anybody. So don't set trick questions, right? Please don't do that. All right, I'll pause for this point. I'm going to, let me see if I can minimize my screen, minimize the so that I can see who is asking. Keisha, are you able to see the questions? Unmute your mic.
There
Keisha.
are
I'm seeing the points, designing.
Pardon me?
I'm seeing the points you just spoke to, 6 to 11. Are those questions you're talking?
No, I'm asking if there are questions, if people, I'm pausing now for people to ask questions. That's what I'm doing.
Okay.
And I heard someone asking who I asked to stop. I don't know who it is. Could you speak now, please?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
And identify yourself, please. Yes.
Yeah, I'm Cedric Wilson from MSBN. The question that I was asking is that you pointed out that you should try to keep your questions independent of each other. But normally, if you're setting a higher level question, usually the essay type, part A sometimes is connected to part B and C. And that is how you really know if the student understand the whole thing. So I was just wondering what would be the drawback for setting a few questions that are dependent on each other.
Remember though that this is not, we're not talking about the essay here. We're talking about multiple choice. And so that is not a recommended way of testing using the multiple choice questions, multiple choice questions to test, right? Yes, in an essay, I can see why you would do that, right? You have there two or three things that you want students to focus on in one essay. But in the multiple choice questions, in setting multiple choice questions, you're setting questions that are independent of one another. I don't know if Dr. Chisholm wants to add anything here while I look at.
Let me just explain something. Let me just explain something. I've seen multiple choice questions. Say for example, A-levels, Cambridge A-level, where you have one question with a graph, and that graph covers 4 or 5 questions, and from that graph, they should be able to get the various answers, and sometimes one answer is dependent on the other.
And would that be multiple choice?
Yes, multiple choice.
But well, I don't know. I don't know if
they'll tell you up front. They'll tell you up front that this question is related. You'll have to answer questions 1 through to 5 on the basis of this graph and this analysis. And it goes through, and you are asked various things related to that one question. And sometimes what you calculate in A is related, in question 2 is related to question 3. And for this level, graduate level, I think it is appropriate.
Okay. Mervyn, you have anything to add on that? I see names. I want to look at the question.
I agree with him totally that those types of questions with a table, a graph, a narrative, and so on, with several questions that are somehow interrelated, and in many cases, they are pitched at different levels. So of the 5 questions, you might have them pitched at different levels. So that's a very good way to set multiple choice questions. Someone was asking, I think Dr. Dixon, Amel Dixon, or Dixon Amel, was asking about the various levels at which we might want to set questions in terms of how we're going to know what is lower order, higher order, and so on. I don't know if you want to respond to that. We were talking in the chat a little about that. Because you have not been able to do the terms of the TOS. The TOS right, would have given us a good idea of how we set these various levels of questions. But the rule of thumb is usually, what are your objectives and what area of the syllabus or what area that you thought commanded the most time and what posed the greatest level of difficulty. That will help you to determine as a professional how you're going to set the questions and how you're going to apportion the various levels. There's no statistical approach that we know of that allows you to do that. It is more of a professional judgment that the faculty member is asked to make.
Okay, I'm going back. Thanks, Mervyn. I'm going back to look at questions coming down. I am at, let me see. Let me just see. I just want to be sure that, okay. Yes, Paul was making the same point. Paul Brown was making the same point about the higher order questions that can be related to a common table, for example, where students need to answer several questions from it, but they're answering, you know, questions that are not pitched at the same level, perhaps. So, but I think Mervyn covered that. So, and Nina's comment is that, yes, it's a different approach, right? And that it can, somebody said it can challenge students. So good. Let me see what else. Yes, Joan Thomas Stone has made a point about quantitative courses, especially lending themselves to that kind of thing. I think Joan was, I'm not sure what she was referring to, but she suggested that instead of trick questions, you can use searching items. Joan, I don't know if you want to explain what you mean by searching items.
Yes, good afternoon, Charmaine and colleagues.
Hi, Joan. Yes.
Yes, I was thinking that the searching items are items that tend to be a little bit more challenging or way more challenging depending on what you're doing. So, and what I was responding to first was what Dr. Chisholm was saying that happens in CAPE, where you have a graph and several questions are posed based on that graph. And those questions could be at different levels in the taxonomy. You know, as the questions step up, they get a little bit more challenging. So the searching items would be the ones that we would say it's a student who really is intimate with the material who would be able to speak to that question. That's what we mean by searching items.
Okay, thank you, Joan. Good to hear you. So that is another approach that you can take, but you have to make sure that you set your questions properly to deal with that. Right, Enid says that the multiple choice question forces students to focus on the subject and not study only for the exam. It's a powerful tool that can be applied at different levels. Yes, I see what somebody is saying about the case study also, yeah, right. So you have the idea, you have you know what you're talking about. All right, thanks, Joan. All right, I am going to come back to my slides now. Yes, I'm back to my slide. Sorry, I had the mic off. David Butler has his hand raised. David?
Oh, thank you. I'm David Butler from Psychology Unit at Western Jamaica Campus.
Hi, David.
Hi. The question about having different questions related to one table or one graph, since we'll be using the online system OUR VLE, it would make sense that you'd have to repeat the question each time that.
David? David? Did David drop out? Okay, David dropped out.
Yeah, sorry about that. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, hearing you. Hearing you, David.
Okay, I was just saying that
Yes.
if we're using, since we're using OUR VLE, and we were shown that we can have a random generation for each of the questions, whereas on paper you would have that one graph, and then under it you'll have the 5 questions that follow related to that one graph. You'll have to copy and paste that graph each time that you're making a question related to that graph.
Okay, yes.
And the other thing as well is that it wouldn't make sense to have any of those questions related to another question, since you're going to be having to have a fresh page related to that graph.
Okay, those are good points, David. Thanks for raising them.
Yeah, man, no problem.
And someone is saying, Michelle is saying, hi, Michelle, that she repeats the STEM each time and puts the different answer options for the question. And Joan says it can be done. So David, they're saying that it's possible. So we will, well, I have not looked at a quiz in our VLE, I have to admit. I have not looked at a good while. So I can't tell you one way or another. So your colleagues say that it's possible, David. So, you know, you can look at how you can do that if necessary. Check with MITS, you know, on that to see how you can do it properly. Michelle says it's time consuming. Paul is asking if students will have the option to change their answer once they submit their answer to a question. I think Joan has used this for a long time. I do believe they can change it, but not after submitting. Am I right, Joan?
Yes, Charmaine, they have the option of going back. Yes, so they can go
Yes,
back, but not as you rightly said, not after submission.
Right.
Yeah, and for the stem of that MCQ question, you can just do a snip of it, save it as a picture, and then each time you just insert it on the page. And in that way, it's not that time consuming. Well, well, to me, I don't know.
Okay, good, thanks.
All right.
Right, good. All right, thanks.
You're welcome, Charmaine.
Right, so I think we are agreed that exams should not be tricks, right? That's for clowns in the circus and so on. So now, in looking at your so this, we have a checklist here. So when you set your questions, it would be good to use a checklist like this to ask yourselves, you know, if you have complied with these things. Is the item appropriate for sending out? Does the task match the learning task that you want to measure? Does the stem present a single clearly formulated problem? Is the stem stated in simple, clear language? Is it worded so that there's repetitive negative wording? Is it a size on the Sorry, I dropped out, but right. So these are questions that you would ask yourselves, the questions in this checklist. You'd ask yourself these things if you have complied with these things when you have set your papers. And colleagues, it is useful to look back. You may be tempted to say, you know, I mean, I've done this so often. I know that I everything, but it helps to review the list and to go back to what you have said. So I dropped out again. I don't know what's going on, but I'm back in, and I'm just asking the telecommunications providers yes. So is the intended answer clearly the best answer? And are all alternate grammatic consistent with the stem? This is important too. And parallel in form. Make sure not to have verbal clues in there or cues, whether clues or cues. And are the distractors plausible and attractive to the uninformed? Eliminate length as a clue, right? Make sure that students don't get a clue from the length of what you have there. Has the alternative all of the above been avoided and none of the above used only when appropriate? Is the position of the correct answer varied so that that in itself is not presenting a clue? And does the item format and grammar usage provide for efficient test taking? All right, now we look at some examples. I want one bright person to put up their hand and tell me whether this question is a good one or whether it needs to improve. Keisha Sherman, can you tell me who is going to answer, please?
Sure. I will.
Who is that?
This is Keisha.
Okay, whose hand is up?
No one.
No one. Okay, so should I start calling names?
Okay, Deanne Soares.
Okay, Deanne, thank you.
Close enough. Thanks, Charmaine. I think it needs to improve.
All righty. How would you improve it? What do you think needs to improve?
Because the stems are all different lengths. You're supposed to have them kind of looking similar in length. So, you know, you have this long sentence here, and then you have a tree, you have a phrase, and you have one word.
Mm-hmm.
And the one that is the asterisk means that that's the correct answer, right?
Right, yes, it does.
Because that's the only one that actually sounds like it's serious. You know,
Okay.
the rest of them actually look like nonsense response. And that's not ever good because, as you say, you're giving away the answer.
Okay.
I don't think it's particularly good.
So the options are not so good. The options could be improved.
No, I did.
Would anybody want to okay. Diane has taken us part of the way. Can anybody suggest? Can anybody else suggest an possible plausible answer?
Hi.
Hi there.
My name is Janique Terrell from Department of Sociology, Psychology, and Social Work, Western Jamaica campus.
Okay, good.
I think that what did I do here? Right, so I think that the question itself could be improved. The most general cause of low individual incomes could be rephrased. Most general cause of low income among individuals or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so I also...
How would you improve? Would you improve the options though? What's one possible way of improving the options?
Lengthen so I agree with what my colleague said previously. I would lengthen some of what he's saying, but this thing about automation and inflation, since the option is a correct, well, not so much a sentence, but something almost resembling one, I'd make the other options similar length, similar set of sentences for better word.
All right. Who can tell me what exactly suggest something to replace B, C, and D with in terms of the way they're stated? How could they be restated? Anybody else willing to suggest?
My hand is up.
Or who is that? Orville Beckford? Is that the name I saw come up just now?
No, Orville Wayne Beckford.
Okay. All right. What would you suggest, sir, as a possible possible distractors?
The first two has to do with the person, so I would leave A and B. But on C and D, I would change C. Let's say we talk about I would say fear of automation, because the thing did say about low individual incomes. So therefore, I'd want to say fear of automation as possible for C, because there are some people really don't fear automation, and so there are certain jobs they won't go for. So I would say fear of automation. Inflation kind of esoteric itself, so I wouldn't use inflation. I would use something else that from the person. Ethnicity, issues of race or issues of ethnicity. So they are thinking that because of their ethnicity, I can get certain job, I can contribute to the United States overall income. So it could be that my ethnicity or my race or my color or something like that. Because since it's gone individual, it makes sense that you have the four things being individual if you want good detractors.
Okay. All right. Paula, anything to, what would you suggest? Paula Ann?
I was suggesting changes for C and D instead of one-word answers. So for C, I think perhaps the increase in automation in recent times, and for D, rising inflation because of challenges with the economy. So just extending them to more complex, not necessarily complex, but longer phrases would make them sound as weighty as option one.
Let's make them more complete, sound more complete.
Yes, agreed.
All right. Let's look at a possible response here. Here's one possible response, but I think everyone was right. You all noticed that it was a dead giveaway. The length of A was a dead giveaway. And the others needed to be improved to match to parallel what A was. So this is one possible answer where it makes the alternatives approximately equal in length. What is the most general cause? So just ask the question, right? Ask a question, make it an outright, complete question in the STEM. And then you tidy up the options. A lack of valuable productive services to sell. The population, Orville was on the right track too, in terms of making it clear that you're talking about the people. The population's overall unwillingness to work, the nation's increased reliance on automation, and increasing national level of inflation. So you see, this is one possible response. There could be others, as you're aware, based on how you were responding, because you all recognize that the length of it was that was the first giveaway. Okay, let's look at another one. What is what's going on with this one? Anybody with their hand up? Any hand up? Could you unmute your mic and tell me who it is?
Paula.
Paula, okay.
I think this is a good one.
You think so? Okay.
Because
is there anybody who disagrees with Paula?
I disagree. I'm Nina from Modern Languages and Literatures.
Okay.
The repetition of chosen by should not be there, for instance, from the point of view of language.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Chosen by.
Yeah, that's repeated 4 times.
It's 4
so
times.
then it would be, we would take chosen by and put it in the stem.
That's right.
Yes,
True.
correct. Mm-hmm.
True.
Yes.
And then each one would just say the people, members of Congress,
the
House of Representatives, and the Electoral College.
Yeah, so if that is corrected to it, then this is a very good one.
And D is the correct
Right,
one.
the Electoral College.
Right, so there's a note, including the stem, any word or words that might otherwise be repeated in each alternative. All righty. Now here's another one. Which of the following is not cited as an accomplishment of the Kennedy alternatives? I almost gave you a clue. My big mouth and gave you a clue and said something. But look at that stem. Who is going to tell me what can be improved there?
Avoid not. This is Tina. This is Tina Hilton, Community Health and Psychiatry Department. Hi. I would say to avoid a negative not in the stem.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And how would you do that?
I would ask somebody else to say it.
All right, I'll ask somebody else. What about Marlies? Would you want to tell us?
I turn up the road. You don't know son. Is it drive?
Marlies?
You want to smell driving?
Marlies?
Hopefully by work.
Excuse me, could you turn off your phone or mute your mic or something, please? Whoever is having that conversation. Marlies? I saw that Marlies had been trying to talk. Marlies, you want to attempt this one? Marlies is Marlies not hearing?
Okay. Tina, again, I guess I would just say, instead of saying which of the following is not, you could have, sure the options are ones that are and not. You could say which of the following is cited as an accomplishment and make sure the options are one that is, as opposed to which of the following is not.
Okay, okay. Any comment on that?
Yeah. Beckford.
Marlies or no, Beckford, please wait. Marlies, Floyd, or Bianech. Do any of you want to comment on that?
Yes, Floyd here.
Okay, Floyd.
All right, so I was thinking that for not, it should be highlighted, it should be bolded or underlined to ensure that persons realize that we're asking the questions in a negative narration.
Okay. Any other comment on that?
You could use except instead at the end.
Pardon me? I didn't hear that.
I was saying that you could use except at the end instead. So the following are accomplishments of the Kennedy administration, except.
That's one of the words you try to avoid as well.
Oh.
Now, right. It makes it more complex than it needs to be. And what you want from the student, what you should be seeking from the student is a response based on what they know. You know, not to make the question as complex as in the way it is presented as is possible. All right, Beckford, you have any suggestion?
No, I was going to make the same suggestion in terms of making a bad situation not so bad by putting except at the end, just like what the Floyd just said. But I take your point in that we should make it difficult for the student. When you put except and not, so many times they didn't read the question properly and just went ahead and pick one. Especially if they're rushing through the thing, you give them 60 MCQ in 1 hour, they're gonna read the first thing and not really realizing that you're saying not, if not cited, or except. And so generally when you speak to them afterwards, they say that, oh, you know, I didn't realize that. And so they just put the first one that they saw.
Okay, so and that's not what you're looking for. You really want them to apply what they learned. All right, so let's see here. So if you're using, guess?
Oh, the answer that is there is what I was suggesting, that you should just underline it and highlight it.
Right, so that's possible, but what emerged was that you could also rephrase the question completely, right? But if you're going to use a not, it has to be clear. It has to be very clear, and it really ought to be used sparingly, right? All right, I have some other samples, right? And I want you to remember the checklist. I mean, hold that in your head. Look at this one. What is going on here, and why is why is B an improved STEM? And I want to thank Dr. Chisholm for these examples. This next set of examples. Look at this one. What's going on here? What would you change?
There are just too much information that the students didn't need to answer this question. So Paul Muldoon, an Irish postmodern poet, is that what does that have to do with answering the question? about which genre is why Brownlee left. It's just that it gives the student too many things to focus on rather than exactly what are you asking the student. So it's like saying that the student, you know, I'm from Spanish Town, and so I'm asking you, what do you think of UII, whatever, you know, what coming from Spanish Town have to do with it?
Okay, so so the original stem, who is talking?
May
Nina.
I? Yes.
Yes, Nina.
I wouldn't use, not even in the improved STEM, I wouldn't use a question and the clause with which it's like cumbersome. The phrasing is very important because it's a very straightforward question. I want to find out a yarn. It's very simple. That's how I feel about it.
Okay, so how would you improve on the improved STEM? I was hoping that somebody would point that out too.
Paul Malcolm, well, I'm not sure if I want, it depends on the level of question. I'm not sure if I would use multiple choice for this, depending on the level of, if I have to teach literature, I'm not sure if I want to find out this in this way, but let me see, and I go back to you.
Okay.
Well, a direct sentence. In why Brownlee left, Paul Muldoon, or the yarn. Let's begin by the poetic yarn used in why Brownlee left is, or directly, why Brownlee left is a sonnet, an elegy, a narrative poem, a dramatic monologue, a haiku.
Okay. What I would say is, which poetic genre does Paul Muldoon use in Why Brownlee Left? Straightforward.
All right.
Yeah.
If you want a question.
Right, if you want a question. Yeah, you start with I'd start with which.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd agree with that too.
Okay, good. Here's another one. What about this one? Tell me what's going on here and why. On the original has 5 options. The revised has 4. Tell me what's going on.
In the first place, I wouldn't consider age period to be infancy. It is too nebulous. Preschool period. These seem to be overlapping insofar as I'm concerned. So I think the revised.
There you go. It's overlapping.
Right, but the revised is also overlapping.
Because it says from birth to 2, and then from 2 to 5, and then 5 to 12, and then the other one picks up at 12.
So if you're at 2, do you pick the first one or the second one? If you're at 2, and if you're at 5, do you pick the second one or the third one? If you think it's 5, and so that one is also overlapping.
I don't think so.
Who is that? Who is that? Who was that? I heard another voice. Was that Cedric? Okay.
Yeah.
What were you saying?
I don't think it is, the revised one is overlapping.
I would say that Becky, I would say that the revised one is overlapping because Becky made a point. Which would you pick if 2 is your answer? If you're age 2, you could pick A or you could pick B, and therefore it has to be an overlap.
If you were including 2 in your answer, you're saying.
Right, because you
And
could.
then the next
It's
one, if
overlap.
you were including 5, if you wanted to include 5.
That
and
is correct.
the other.
So it should be more than 2 or older than 2, whatever. 2 years. Can't be. It's overlap. It's clear.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that, Trevor.
Okay, all right. Now, I know that Paula Ann and Limoy had their hands up. Limoy, we haven't heard from you as yet, so let's hear from you.
Hi, good afternoon, thanks. So I was going with the similar comments where you could have the options from birth to 2 years, 2 to 5, but then the next option can be between 5 and 12, and the final one would be above 12, something like that, because they're not really mutually exclusive. And I also think that when you're looking at both the original and revised, the first one speaks to infancy, preschool period and stuff. You're looking at age period. They're both looking at age period, but the revised one gives you a specific age which you can work with, because the infancy, preschool period, depending on where you're coming from, they can vary in terms of the age itself.
Okay, so there are various things that one could discern in the original and revised that would make you want to revise, right? So that's the point. Look at this one now. Out of the sciences, look at the original and look at the improved. Who is going to speak to this one?
I'd like to try.
Who is that?
David.
David, all right, you want to try this one? Go.
For the first one, it seems like they put possible stems in each of the options.
Okay.
Instead, if anything, those could have been like 4 different questions, and then polysaccharide would have been the answer, the correct answer in another series of alternatives.
Okay.
For B.
Right. So you have identified. Okay. Go ahead.
For B, the answers seem to work, I guess. They're not too long, and they seem to be in line with what the question is asking.
So you can discern a clear question in that stem, is
Right.
what you're saying. That it
Right.
poses a question, which is an
Yes.
important thing for a stem to do. A stem must
Right.
pose whatever the question is. In the original, it really doesn't pose a question.
Right.
That's one of the things. Deanne? Deanne and Mahari, any comments?
I think I'd agree with him, because you did comment that we aren't supposed to have stems in each distractor or possible answers, and so the improved stem takes care of that. The only, well, I suppose you can't, in a perfect world, you'll be able to get all of the responses having the identical length, but they don't. But they all speak to parts of the cell. So I suppose it is an improvement, I would think.
Okay. Paula Ann?
Mute. Okay, I was saying pretty much the same thing. The first thing you told us was that the stem needs to be meaningful by itself. So as it is, the original stem is a one word. And if I remember correctly, we're to put as much information, relevant information as possible in making the stem able to stand by itself as a question. So therefore, the improved one is clearly better.
Okay. There's another Suarez whose hand is up.
Yes, Ms. Mackenzie.
Mr. Suarez.
I think the first one, the objectives that you're testing, not clear.
This in A?
Yeah, in the first one. I'm not certain what
the original stem.
Yeah.
What it is that they right.
What they are testing is not clear to me.
Right. And it's because they've really not asked, they've really not posed the problem or the question.
Right.
So, right. And then in each of the options, you have, you know, are made up of, are not, and so on. So clearly this one could have been improved, right? So do you accept, colleagues, that what's Marlies? Is your hand still up?
Yes, it is. I just wanted to point out that for A, the B option is a -1 because all the others are saying are made up of, are created, can be described, but that one said are not found. So it would not be considered as an option there, or it should not be considered.
And you notice that they got it right. It's a capital, it's in all caps. You notice I got that part of it right. Okay, so we know what we're saying with that one, right? So those were the examples. Are you comfortable with the examples we have? Do you have examples that you want to share? Remember that we have something else to move on to after this. I was asked to do something on the take-home essay as well. But do you, if you have, I would appreciate it, and I think your colleagues would too, if we took, say, 3 examples, 3 samples. Is that possible? And there's a question from Tina, where she says that UWI, she thinks that she understands that UWI suggests that you have order. I don't know if Marvin is able to speak to that. To me, if it is possible to have them in alphabetical, you mean, when you say the option, Tina, you mean the way they're written in actions?
The answer, like in the previous example, you would put the options in alphabetical order. So I think it was cytosol would be first, endoplasmic reticulum, and so on. I think it's also to just help to not make the student sort of guess which one. I don't know.
I'm sorry, I dropped out again, but I am back. The point is that, as you, Tina, I was hearing you, you don't want to set the questions up in ways that make the student be able to identify the correct answer based on the position. All right, so does any, who has their hands up? Camille?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm from UWI Mona. You can hear me? Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, hearing you very clearly.
Okay,
oh, yes,
good.
Very clearly.
All right, I was taught, if you could go back to your example, I noticed that the last one that we used, the last slide with with the comparison of the multiple choice questions, right?
This one?
I was, yes, I was taught that you end with either the colon, semicolon, or the question mark, and that determines whether the option starts with a common letter or a capital letter, and then the options should be ordered in either ascending or descending in terms of size, and that is the criteria that you use. Is that still what obtains? I'm not getting a feel of that from this. I'm not quite sure.
In terms of the colons and semicolons, those are falling by the wayside. That I can speak to for sure. In terms of the sequence, whether it's ascending or descending, I don't know if Mervyn had heard me or if I had already dropped out. I don't know if Tina had said UW, her understanding was that UWI had certain policies. I don't know whether Mervyn would want to speak to that.
I don't know of the policy at UWI. I do know of the recommendation that it should be in some kind of order. So the ascending or descending order, alphabetic, different authorities will recommend these kinds of approaches. The important thing is order it in such a way that you're not giving away anything and that you are not suggesting anything to the student, that kind of thing. I think that was the more important concern based on the literature that I've seen over the years and so on.
Okay, thanks. So not as far as we know, there's no UWI position on that. And as I said, the punctuation marks are falling by the wayside for many things, and this is one of the areas I have not seen the punctuations in recent times. I haven't seen it. So who is going to be willing to share with us? And there are a couple of questions here that we have not addressed. Albert Hilton was asking when you're going to be trained to set MCQs using our VLE. No, that would be for MITS to do, right? And I suspect that they have done that. They may also have videos that they for use. I will follow up on that, colleagues, in case you need a refresher and so on. I'll follow up with MITS on that.
There are lovely resources on the ORVLE training module on ORVLE itself.
On ORVLE.
Yeah, and I think some videos are
Yes.
there that persons can actually review for themselves and get some good information as to how this might be achieved on ORVLE.
All right, good. Thanks, Mervyn. Now, there's a question from Trevor Smith. I know we have moved on from this point, but there's a question that has preoccupied my mind for days. As you all know by now, students are now to be given 2 to 7 days to do MCQ exams. What are some suggestions for setting MCQs to last 2 to 7 days? The thing is, you're not setting the MCQ to last for 2 to 7 days. That's not what you're doing. What you're doing, you're setting, well, that is one of the first things is to have a good large question bank. That is one thing. Now, remember that a student will have one attempt. So the student goes in, they start doing it, they're expected to complete it on that one attempt. So one student does not have 2 to 7 days to do it. And if your bank is large enough, then the student ought not to be able to tell, you know, his or her classmates that, I mean, these were all the questions, right? That ought not to be possible. And you must make sure also that your questions are robust. And this is what we are talking about, making sure that the questions are robust enough. So I don't know if I've answered you, Trevor. Omir, I can speak if
All right. I've had a part of the answer, but I've been told, based on what I have heard from the social science meetings and so, that the students, if the students' internet were to go down, for instance, they should be given another opportunity to do it.
Oh,
if
yes.
it goes
Yes.
down. So therefore, it could be a situation where there's more than one attempt at the quiz. That's my understanding. They must be given an attempt.
Yeah. But if the questions
And so
are set
some
to
would be using credit also, and if their credit goes, some would be using credit to connect. Then the issue comes up again. Shouldn't they be given another chance to respond?
Yes, and what I am aware of is that students are usually given other opportunities. So the size of your question bank and the way the quiz is set to shuffle, those are some of the things that you would put in place in setting up the quiz to try and ensure as best as possible that a student who has to have another attempt does not get the same questions to respond to. So it's part of it is in how you set the questions up as well.
Can I say something, Charmaine?
Yes, please, Orville.
And we also have to bear in mind that 2 or 3 students could be sitting side by side doing the same MCQ. So this is why it's important to randomize. So you're correct. We need to give, so if it's 60 questions, you give about 120 or 150. So therefore the computer can randomize. So I'm sitting beside you, but I don't have your questions. I have a completely different set of questions. Because what you would find is that 2 or 3 students sitting beside each other would say, okay, number 1 is A, number 2 is C, and so on and so forth. But because the computer can randomize it, you can guard against that by putting in a large bank to ensure that the computer can randomize it properly.
So Becky, just for my own understanding, are you saying then that if the technology goes, say you had the student was given 100 questions at the onset, technology go for whatever reason. When it comes back or when they do the second attempt, they have completed 10 of the questions, they'll be getting another 90. Can our technology as it stands do that, just another 90 instead of getting the entire 100 again, or what?
I don't know if it's having that capability, but my thing that the students, because there's no stopping and come back to finish as far as the MCQs are concerned.
Once they would have to start over.
They'd have to start over. They'd have to start over.
I see what you mean.
Right, they're not getting
that answers it. If you have a large data bank, and if it goes, if the technology goes, then students start over, then that clearly would provide the answer to my question, yes.
Okay, Kevin has a hand up, as does Michelle Black, and Floyd and Karen Graham. Kevin first, please.
Are you hearing me? Hello, are you hearing me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. My name is Kevin Harris.
Yes.
Kevin
Hi,
Harris.
Kevin.
Attached to the Mona School of Business, course, Risk and Treasury Management. My question, I actually wrote you the question I had, and it was in regard to the previous slide, and it was to do with the grammar. And if you could go back to it, I just look at the grammar, which was one of the points you said. Yes. where it says polysaccharide, R, and you see R in all of the three options.
Yeah.
It's either polysaccharide is or polysaccharides are. And if you look at the other option from the original stem, you see where they have pluralized polysaccharides.
Yes. Yes.
That's true. Just a point of
yes, on the grammar. That's right.
Spoken about.
Yes. Thanks. Nobody had raised that one. All right, thanks.
Okay.
Next was Michelle Black.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Michelle Black from UACHTM. I had not really a question. In terms of the multiple choice questions, in terms of timing, is it typically like 60 seconds per multiple choice question, 1 minute per question? Dr. Chisholm?
I think, Mervyn, you know the answer to that? Somebody like who uses it like Joan?
I think you can set it.
Or Bill may know.
I believe off the top of my head that you can set it to the time you want it, you know, to give the students to.
For each question?
Well, yes. I believe you can, because you have to set up each question, you know, go in settings and set up. You can go in settings and set up. I believe you can set that, but I would have to double check.
All right, Joan or Bill, is that how what is it?
Well, sort of about a little more than that. It depends on the type of question that you're setting. As you know, we have higher order skills and we have lower order skills. It depends on where you are. In a midterm, when you just finish a few things, not all of the things may be higher order skills. And so therefore, 60 questions in 1 hour, I mean 1 minute per question is fine. Where the student has to stop and reason and to engage higher order skills of evaluating, assimilating, then it might not suit you to have 60 questions in 60 minutes. You may want to have 30 questions in 60 minutes, given that the students have to employ different level skills to answer the question. So it's not a one shoe fit all, but more depends on the type of question, the level of skill that is required on the taxonomy in each question, so you can decide if this one is just definitional questions, all right, 60 questions, 60 minutes. But if these are questions that cause you to think and to reason and to evaluate, then it can be the same.
Right, so when you have like those case studies, those mini case study questions that you put in the multiple choice questions, those would require more, but I know somewhere they had said that's the rule of thumb, but yeah, I think for those types of questions, maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes, you know, so on average you can kind of gauge how long to set the test for. But I like the idea of doing a run through of the test yourself and having the second examiner do the same thing. That's a very good idea. Thank you.
Okay, and actually that falls in line with what the exam regulations ask for. They never specified it for multiple choice, but it's a good idea for multiple choice to apply it to the multiple choice, that you should be able to work it out in X time, work each question, I would say each question in a fraction of the time, as well as your second examiner. There are some more questions. There were Karen, Floyd, did we take Floyd?
Hi, Floyd here.
Okay.
What I was looking at is the second point in terms of the time, where it says we normally should be able to complete the test in a third of the time allocated for the student.
Yes.
I was thinking that the 1/3 of the time kind of seems excessive. I normally work with 50%, but is that a standard for the 1/3 of the time?
I believe that's what I've seen in the assessment guidelines. I can look back, but I believe that's what I saw in there. That is 1/3. But the point is that you should be able to do the question in a whiz. You should be the whiz at it. So it ought not to be taking you the same amount of time that it takes a student. to do. I mean, and we know that different students operate at different levels also, you know. So something might take one student might be able to do this more quickly than another, and so on. We are aware of things like that. I see something here saying that sometimes students have access to international test banks, and that they take pictures and share questions. Well, in this time when people are supposed to be doing things, well, we are supposed to be keeping our physical distance from one another. I would hope that people are not, you know, people won't be sitting down and beside one another to try and collude or anything like that. I don't know what else to say. In terms of the international test banks, is it that people are using those? That people are using international test banks?
Yes, we often.
And I see. Okay.
May I?
Yes.
We have.
Hearing you.
We have international test banks for Prentice Hall books.
Who is that?
This is Trevor Smith, Mona School of Business.
Who is talking?
Trevor Smith, MSBM, Mona School of Business.
Person. Okay, you're back in. Who is that? Please.
Yeah, this is Trevor Smith. Can you hear me?
I think Charmaine chipping out on him.
Yes, because we can hear you clearly.
We can hear
I
you.
dropped out again. Okay.
I believe you're asking if we have international testing banks. Is that the question?
Banks, yes. Yes,
and
if that's what some people use, yes.
And the answer is a resounding yes. We have Prentice Hall
and
test banks in Mona School of Business and Management for many of our years.
And that's what you draw your questions
typically
from.
Typically.
I think it depends because, sorry to cut you, I think it depends because I use multiple test banks from multiple publishers, from Pearson, Wiley, Sage, Oxford Press. And if I'm teaching one course, I have multiple test banks and I combine them. So I have a very huge test bank and then I adjust the questions based on that.
Okay. Does that suggestion help, Trevor?
Oh, I mean Pearson. Is it Pearson? I mean Pearson. Is it Pearson's? But whatever. Certainly in our marketing courses, we have the test bank from Pearson's. Right, that's the one, not Prentice Hall.
Okay, but what Michelle is saying is that she uses several different ones and makes adjustments and puts them together. I was going to say, you know, apart from having the test, could you insert your own questions into that?
And
as well.
That's why I responded that
I don't know if
typically,
Mervyn
but
has any
I do that. I put my own questions also.
Right. Mervyn, any other suggestions for working around that?
No, I think those are excellent suggestions. I like the suggestion from Dr. Black.
Yes.
And I think that's useful.
Okay. Lawrence, your hand is up. Took a little while to get to you, Lawrence, but
yeah, that's okay. But I think Karen hand was up before me, so.
Okay, so you're deferring to Karen. Karen.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Karen Graham from MSBM. MIS is my major. I have a couple points to make. I'll try to be very quick. One, with respect to test banks, I hope you safely assume that they're out there. They're posted on all kinds of sites, and for almost any textbook that you have, the test bank is available to the students, right? Whether it's Scribed or any other sites. That's what I found when I used to use them. Hence, it takes a lot of time to develop our own content for my course, but we ended up having to do that for that reason. Second, with respect to timing, usually, and I know I did a training course before CETL was CETL, whatever the old name was, Mervyn. The general rule of thumb is an easy question, half a minute, a medium question, 3/4 minute, and a harder question, 1 minute. So that's a standard that, I mean, we learned way back when, and that's kind of what I stick to. But the 1/3 of the time is fair. I set hands-on exams, and if I require a student to do something in an hour, then the instructor should be able to do it in 15, 20 minutes. I think that is fair. I think half the time is much too lenient. Again, it depends on the complexity of the question. The fourth thing I'd like to say is with respect to randomization in ORVLE. It's a tricky thing because we have 3 levels of randomization. 1, you can randomize the order of the questions. 2, you can randomize the order of the responses in each question. We do both. But 3, you can have questions randomly generated from categories. So I strongly suggest, instead of saying, here are 120 questions, randomly pick 60. If you're going that route, then you have to ensure that all 60 are at the same level. So all 60 are easy, all 60 are medium, all 60 are hard. So what I would further suggest you do is create question categories, which is what we do. So if I have 60 question exam, I have 60 categories instead. And so each category would have at least 2 questions. Normally we try for 3 or 4. And so ORVLE will allow you to randomly pick 1 question from each category. Therefore, the questions have to be at the same level in that category. So you do have that option, and that then works contrary to the whole ascending, descending, what's the order, because then ORVLE will decide the order, in which case, as you said previously, Charmaine, the all of above, you can't use that anymore because the all of above answer might end up being the first one if it's randomized. Similarly with the none of above. So you want to, even if you can do the none of the others, it's still not suggested. So we just kind of get rid of the all of above, none of above, just because of the randomization.
And the fact that no, this is automated. So you see how the technology allows you to be a bit more precise in setting your questions. And Susanna, does that answer your question? Does Karen's?
Yes, for the most part, I just need to figure out if or how ORVLE can, because what I would want to do is ideally set by topic, and for each topic, set a difficulty level. And so hopefully when it's randomized, each test can choose from a particular topic and a particular level, so that each randomized test is more or less fair across the board for all students.
Okay. So I've looked at other things on ORVLE, but I have not looked at what they have, the videos and resources they have on MCQs. But Marvin says that there are good ones there. So I would suggest that you review, go and have a look at them in relation to what you want to do, and that will help you to be clear on what you can do. I have questions now about the take-home exams, and that is what is to follow. That's what, these are just some reminders. I don't know. I kept these over from Open Campus, and I imagine I mean, it may not apply for this if it is that you are doing you're creating your quizzes in using the quiz portion of Moodle. So these would not apply, but I am going to, with Mervin's permission, share this document, a CETL hand do's and don'ts of writing MCQs. And I'm going to share along with this presentation. I just that I used, but the first one, the do's and don'ts, will be shared. You know, these internet service providers are going to cause me to break the government's rules, you know, and come and go and pay them a visit. Yes, tongue. I was saying, pardon me?
Just speak in tongues.
What you said, Lawrence?
So just speak in tongues.
Okay, and don't bother to go there, right? Keep myself safe. Yes, I was saying that I'm going to send the first one, the do's and don'ts of writing MCQs to the workshop organizers, to the people who organizes for distribution, as well as the slides, right? So that's what I'm going to do. So that's part one that we've completed. Now I am going to move on to the take-home essay, which is much shorter than this. And there are some things that we would have covered in this at the very beginning that I would ask you to bear in mind as well when in coming to that. Okay, so go get a quick drink of water while I take this down and share the other one. Okay, are you seeing my screen again?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. All right, good. So this was the other thing that I was asked to make a presentation on. I have to tell you that I knew about it in my head, but I had to think about it to put it down on paper or on, well, this is not paper, is it? So, you know, but I think this is what it is, and we can discuss. Now, this is a take-home exam. When I thought about it, I said this is one of the things I should say, that it shouldn't require that the student do research for new material. It should be based on what's been covered. You can set short answer questions, or it can be essay kinds of questions, or a combination of both. No, it is something that they're doing that students will be doing on their own outside of a classroom setting. On their own, in the sense that they will be in their own space, not in a classroom with you monitoring or whatever it is. So it makes sense for you to have higher expectations of the students, because they have access to, at the very least, the resources that relate to the teaching experience, to the class, to the course. And they also have more time to prepare and to produce the work than they would have had in an in-class test. So therefore, you must require of students that they give them something to think through, right? Their answers to and prepare for. So don't design the questions in such a way that the student will be tempted if they open the questions and if they, look at the questions. Don't design in such a way that the first thing they look at it and say, oh, sure, this is cheese. I don't know if that's what they say nowadays, but in my time it have been, this is cheese. And say, okay, I can leave this for the last moment and just get right down to typing or writing once I get it. I don't have to look back at anything or so. Don't design so that they are tempted to think in that way, right? Based on what you're presented to them. And we come back to this. What are you testing? Which is the same thing, the same question. I guess it would be the same kind of question, the same question for, an essay, essay-based exam. What are you testing? So determine the learning objectives or outcomes that you are testing. Make sure that they are in alignment with what was stated on the course outline, right? And again, identify the topic or the theme, whatever it is, whatever the topic or topics are that you're going to test. Identify them, set them out, determine what they are. Remember the whole idea of the TOS, right? Which helps with alignment and weighting and so on. So make sure you are clear about what it is, what topic, what theme, what area you are going to test. And you're testing, as I said before, the material that has already been covered, right? So look back at your lecture notes, the readings you assigned, whatever your course materials, whatever readings, whatever videos they looked at, or you set them to look at, whatever it is, right? And bear those in mind when you are setting your questions for your what you're giving students to take home, to giving students to do away from the classroom. And mirror what the requirements of an in-class test. but they're not in class, right? But mirror what you require, what would have required there. Don't set questions that are generic kind of questions, right? It comes back to expecting more from the student, right? And to the best of your ability, I mean, and this will not apply to everybody because of the different kinds of subjects and disciplines that you teach. But if it is possible, expect that the answer that they're going to come up with should be unique to the question that they're answering, right? If it is possible, mirror real life works. For example, it could be that if it is something in management, for example, give something that would have been possible in real life. To write a proposal for a specific thing, write a paper to present on a particular area, right? And you, of course, outline very clearly what the expectations are, what you want, what you want to see in that paper. The questions must be very clear. They must require analysis, not recall, and not the lower level questions. You must require analysis from them at the very least. You could ask for comparison and comparing and contrasting, looking at, for example, 2 different readings. You have two different positions, a theory and somebody else's position on it, right? You're asking them to compare and to contrast. And for all of this, of course, they're sitting at home doing whatever it is. You want to see proper citation and proper referencing. Now, it may not be, it's not going to be a ton of citations and references. After all, it's based upon what they've covered, and it's not going to be based upon new research, but you want to see the referencing and the citation. And include, where it is possible, include reflection on their own experience and their own thought processes. Where it is possible. It's not always possible. It just depends, again, on the nature of the course and the discipline. I've thought that our current situation presents a good, could present a good, something good to students to reflect upon within the context or framework of some courses or disciplines, in terms of, what this has made them, what this has shown them in relation to, what they're studying, this reality here, what this has shown in relation to what they're studying. So that's a possible thing a possible, big thing to use, because while we have some common experiences of this situation, we also have individual experiences and feelings and thoughts about it, right? And perhaps they could be related in some ways to what they're doing in what you're doing in courses, using, of course, materials that they have already covered. Set questions that, and this is what I guess I was just talking about, require application of concept or theory to a situation, right? So here is this concept.
that we have covered, and you want them to apply it to a situation using the course materials or text or specific articles that were covered in class. And this ought to be a way of getting them to read. This is a possible way of getting them to read. You could also base questions on suggestions that they themselves, sometimes they may say things or ask questions and it may not be intended as a suggestion. I've said suggestion, but may not be intended as a suggestion. But you could use what they have said and ask to come up with questions. You could ask them to argue for or against or present both sides of a matter, a subject, based again upon the readings and giving examples. And you can set questions too that are complex in the sense that they ask, for example, they say to the student, read so and so, something that of course they got already. Summarize the key points and discuss or apply that to a real world situation or a situation that they're familiar with, that kind of thing. So I think that in these ways, it makes it a little less likely that they would be able to get the kind of help that would make a difference to a grade, for example. And I wonder if you would agree with me that this is so. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree, because that clearly would be critical thinking. It would give them an opportunity to now read the material that they get in class and then applying it to a real world situation. So it shows it's not something that they can just go on the internet and find the answer. It's something that they would have to do a bit of reflection and to be able to synthesize all the knowledge to put on the paper. So I think that's a very good example here we can do in take-home exams.
Okay, because it's, you see, I never said anything about the internet, but of course I know that you are going to go there, and that is what, and that is going to be, and that would be the students' default or fallback, and that is what I think we'd be trying to avoid. Any other question? Michelle is saying, yes, it's authentic. What I'm saying, Michelle, is in as far as it is possible, set authentic types of assessment. Heather is asking, should we require students to include references in final exam take-home essays? They're going to have, Heather, is it what? No more than 48 hours, something like that. I'm trying to remember the exact statement. I think they said no more than 48 hours. So if they're having 2 days,
yes,
right, and they're using the course materials, using yes, readings that they've gone through and so on, I would say that you should expect to see references, because if they're going to be quoting from right, anything, which, because they have they should have their resources there with them, they would want to be quoting and so on, you should expect to see the references. I would not expect to see a lot of references, but certainly if they quote directly from something or refer to somebody's work, then they need to cite it properly.
Okay, thank you.
Michelle, your hand is up. Oh, the hand went down. All right.
I'm sorry, my question was about the authentic assessment, but I was wondering if you could talk a little about preventing cheating in take-home exams, or I don't know if that was later down in your slides.
No, I don't know how you're going to prevent cheating because they won't be in front of you. So you can't prevent it, but what you will have to do is try and detect if there has been cheating. And if it is an essay, right, my understanding is that they're still to be submitted through Turnitin. Well, Turnitin is still to be used for submission. And you had the benefit of having the students in class for what, 5 weeks or so. You should have a sense of, you know, how they talk, how they write, and so on. You should have that kind of sense. So that should help you to discern if what you are hearing in an essay or in short answer questions is not their voice. If you're hearing a different voice that doesn't sound like theirs, you should have that sense. Orville, your hand is up.
Yes, I was thinking to that in terms of the essays. It's so important that the student, when you set them these exams that require the higher order skills, for them to understand that you didn't set the questions to Marx or to Weber or to whoever it is. You set them the question. Because there are so often when you set essays, you get them, they start according to Marx, according to Weber, according to so-and-so, and you're saying to them, what about according to you, who I set the question? And so we should have those things that we are looking for, and that we also will advise them that you are setting questions, they are not direct questions where you just take out a Marx and come and you cut and paste. And so we have to look out for things like those.
Okay, and so perhaps that what you're saying there would come into this section where I don't think I have it down, but it would certainly fit here that you should prepare students for writing the take-home essay by telling them, I'm saying that there are things you can consider. Some of these things you can consider, but certainly in preparing them to write the essay, you should tell them that what you want to hear is their voice. What you want to hear is their considered and informed position on X, Y, Z, right? That you've asked about. So, take that kind of thing into consideration. I could probably add it here, that you should prepare them by letting them know, but you prepare them for any kind of essay in that way, right? So thanks for that one. Audrey, your hand is up.
I think, good afternoon, everyone. I think you may get to it eventually, but just to underscore what Audrey was talking about in terms of the critical thinking, that you would give the students a grading scheme which shows them what is it you're looking for, and give them a little discussion about it so they know that you're not only looking for according to Marx and according to Weber, but that you really want to get their ideas and their own assessment of what it is they read. Even if they say according to Marx and according to Weber, then what do you think about what they said? That the grading scheme and the explanation of what it is you're looking for will certainly guide them.
Yeah. Thanks. So you can tell them the topics or the questions that you will set, because
you know, you can tell them, you know, from what you're going to draw it, right? Because they're not going to know, even if you tell them that you're taking it from these 6 areas, they won't know what exactly from those areas you will be testing. And they won't know that until they get the papers, right? I don't know, I believe that my understanding, anybody can correct me if I'm wrong, is that exams is going to be responsible for distributing leads from. And see, that's why I have a note here saying that the exam section will be involved in this. Because normally when people, under normal circumstances, when you give a take-home essay, exams is not involved. So I don't know, you know, if somebody, I am not sure, but if I have that here, it's because I learned that somewhere. I didn't dream that one, but I can always verify that whether exams is going to be involved. But I talked to a friend of mine also who uses this, and her thing is that she has got better by doing it this way, because what she has even done is to tell them the areas, yes, but she has the paper in sections, and they're to do one from section 1, one from section 2. They don't know what's coming in section 1 and what's coming in section 2. Now, in your case, I don't know if it's only one essay that they're going to be doing. I don't know where you know that lies. But you know, she has used this. I'm just saying that so that even in the future, you know, outside of these abnormal circumstances, you could consider, if you're not using it in those ways, you know, doing it in those ways. So again, how many questions are you going to give them to choose from? Are you going to have 2 sections? What's the word limit for the essays? You know, and we also have to think about the times that we are in. We don't know what students have available as tools at home, for example, for doing this. So it's fair to give them 2 days or whatever to, you know, to do the assignment in. Some may need the time to type as well, if it is that they're you know, they have a computer, they're using whatever, a laptop, whatever, because not everyone types well. And I mean, you would know that based on what you would have received from students as submissions, you know, that this is also something to bear in mind. Let them know, tell them upfront that they should review the course materials and lecture notes before they begin to write their answers. And let them know that they have the time, they have 2 days, whatever it is, so the essay should be properly constructed. You're looking for, as best as possible, some sort of thesis statement, some sort of structure, you know, examples, a conclusion, and you're looking for the mechanics of writing. No, don't overdo it though, in terms of that, right? Look for what you would be, the kind of this, for this particular the construction, don't look for anything less than you would have got in an in-class essay, right? And encourage them, if they have 2 days to do it or whatever it is, to draft and review before they submit, right? Encourage them to use the time wisely to submit, you know, something that is good. And remind them about, you know, the university's guidelines on plagiarism and cheating, and turn it in be used, submitting essays. As Aldrich said, prepare and provide a rubric so that students know what you are looking for, right? What criteria will you be using for marking, which be as transparent as possible in this, right? So any questions there? I have some questions here. Let me see. Marie is asking, does anyone know the timelines for submission of grades? Some of us have large classes and will be grading hundreds of essays. Marie, I don't know. If the system is set up to do online marking, no, Olivine, no. Unfortunately, it's not so. I do believe, though, that in the future, you know, the institution should look at that. Ajwa, will the session cover using our VLE to set exams? What kind of, you mean, what kind of exams, Ajwa?
I was under the impression that the point of, because the session is entitled Certain Exams Using OU VLE.
Where? Not what I have here.
No, that was sent to me. That was the caption. And
oh,
so
no.
Told with the understanding that we'll be learning how to administer to so one set and receive the exams and perhaps use the grading systems on the platform to provide feedback or comments or a grade, letter grade or number grade or whatever. So
no, yeah. Well, no, that's not what I was asked to do. What I have as a title of the both sessions is what I was asked to do. If it has to do with using our VLE for those kinds of things, that would have been the instructional support section of NITS. As it is though, it may be, I don't know if Mervyn is aware. Mervyn, are you still here? I don't know whether there's anything, whether there are resources there already on about that. Is Mervyn here still? Mervyn seems to have left. But no, I wasn't asked to deal with our VLE at all. And as I said, that would have been NITS. I will look though, Adra, at the resources that they have on their website, and you can look as well. Mervyn says they have very good resources on you know, MCQs, for example. So it could well be that there are resources there as well. And certainly in terms of uploading files, I know that they would have, surely. And using the grading system, I don't know. So I can find out though and let you know. But definitely the system is not set up for online marking, Olivine. I'm sorry, Olivine and Marie. Can't help you with that. You just have to sit down with a strong drink of water. Turnitin, Michelle is asking about Turnitin. If you'll be having a training session for Turnitin, again, I have not heard of any, but I can inquire, Michelle. If people feel that they need that, I will inquire about that for you. So let me make a note of that, Turnitin, and using the grading system and questions, etc. All right. All right. Okay, so I've made a note of those things. Any other, Orvin, your hand is raised?
Well, I posted that that the system can be set up for grading online, because currently for those of us who teach Caribbean civilization, Phone 1101, the system is set up for us to grade online and to indicate the level of grading and comment on each section of the assignment. And so that was set up across the Caribbean since the course is taught across all three main campuses. So it can be done. And I don't, in fact, I didn't get the impression it being changed in this new dispensation, that we are still gonna have the same type of things done online. But that's for the foundation course.
So are you saying that you can, all right, you receive essays, are you talking about essays?
Yes, students.
All right. Right, so you receive the essay, you download the essay, you mark and comment and so on, and you put the essay back up.
Right. In fact, you know, it's set up in such a way that you download the essay, but it's not like you download to somewhere separate.
Yeah.
It's within the same box that so you read so you read the essay and then now you put your comments for the various answers.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Good. Does that help, Adro?
Not really, but you can proceed. It's okay. I'll figure it
out. Okay. All right. I see that Gunjan is saying that the title is setting MCQs and take-home essays use our VLE. I want you to, so I didn't get that. I was specifically setting MCQ and take-home exams because I don't work in MITS, and that would be something that the ISS staff, that part of it is what they would do. And so if it is, I mean, I can reach out to them and see if they have the time at this point, or have them point me to where the resources are, because as Mervyn had said, there are very good videos already that they have there on the site on setting MCQs in terms of, you know, submitting essays and so on. Based on what Orville has said, I will ask them, you know, what else there is and let you know. Right, I see that people are asking about the grading system and so on. Right, and Heather says, if you see why students need realistic times to submit assignments. Well, I think, yeah. And Patrice wants to know if the system for online grading of essays and making comments, if there are videos on that on our VLE. I can't say. Orville, are there videos on our VLE? Do you know?
I don't know if there's an OER VLE, because most of us who teach the course got the training over Open Campus. So I know Open Campus has training.
They have videos and
right,
so on.
Right, they have videos. But what is interesting to note is that the same course is set up on OER VLE. That is the FO, the Phone 1101 with the grading online is done through OER VLE.
Okay. What is happening now though, because right across the university, there is, you know, everybody has to be teaching remotely and students have to be attending, you know, virtually. What's happening is that there's a lot of sharing of resources and a space has been set up. I'm not sure yet what's there. Videos and so on are there. I will follow up on that for you though, about whether these resources are available in this common space that's going to be set up for resources to be used right across the institution. So I promise to follow up on that for you. I have a note that says that Dr. Chisholm
would like to inform us that there's a power cut on campus. So he has no internet connection. So again, Heather, it comes back to your point. Why students need time to submit, realistic times to submit assignments, and why it is too that you know, we have to have alternative plans and so on for when we lose internet and so on.
Absolutely.
Right? But this is the way of the world. And all of the you know, the various, the Zooms and Blackboards and so on are all overburdened across the globe now. So, you know, that's what it is. So yes, you're right. Student, we have to be realistic, and we have to make allowances, and sometimes give the benefit of the doubt. You know, if somebody says, I started the quiz and I got knocked out, I know that in open campus, you know, checks would be made, and I suspect the same thing happens on Mona as well. If a student says, I started it and I could not complete it, I got, you know, bumped out or whatever it is. There are ways of checking to see if that happened. Now, you won't know why it happened or so, but you check to see whether they, you know, they have, as far as you can discern or detect, a legitimate, you know, reason for not completing the first attempt. And it is based upon things like that they're given another attempt. So we do the best we can. And in terms of setting the take-home essays, if you try to be as authentic as you can be, then you know, you should reduce the risks of where students would be, you know, colluding or getting help if they make it challenging, but based upon what you have covered. Any further questions? And the only resource I have here was the guidance from BUS on issuing waivers, and that's where they talked about you know, us giving take-home essays and giving, I think it was no more than 48 hours within which to submit. So that's the only resource I have there. And that's the end of my 2 presentations for the afternoon. So I am going to end the slideshow. And
well done, thank you.
No.
Thank you very much.
Where are we? I want to take them.
Thank you all.
I enjoyed the interaction.
Thank you, Shami.
Thank you.
You are welcome. I hope it was useful.
It was.
Very useful.
It was. Because
Thanks,
I've
Charmaine.
Okay.
A workshop before, but this was similar content, but the interaction was different.
Okay, good.
So it was very nice.
Thank you, Charmaine. This is Judith. I have a lot of catching up to do because I had such frequent internet breaks. Yes, so I'm looking forward to the recording and your PowerPoint.
Okay, and I had a lot of interruptions too, but you know what to do. What to do, it is the way of the world, and we have to just take a strong drink of water and bye, Mr. Beckford.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
A strong drink of water.
Stay safe and healthy. Stay safe.
I did not have an S on the word water. I didn't.
Thank you. Thank you.
Enjoy the break, colleagues.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Enjoy the break.
Thank you.
Bye.
Stay safe, everyone.